All right, good morning, everybody. We've got 11 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We may have a few others join us momentarily, but should be seamless when they jump on. So wanted to welcome everybody this morning to our fourth session in our HR webinar series. Today's topic is benefits in compensation. And with that being said, I'm going to turn everything over to Wayne Smith to go ahead and get started, but welcome everybody.
All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. It's going to be a small group today. We got some feedback that there's a lot going on this week, and we would have several people that wouldn't be joining, but just a reminder, these webinars are recorded and they are available on the AMT website. So with the small group, I really hope that everybody takes advantage of the opportunity to jump in and make this a conversation, make this a two-way presentation. As Jeff said, today we're going to talk about benefits and compensation. This is a lot of fun for a lot of people. Hopefully we can do some things today to kind of simplify some things, dispel some myths. And I really tried to create this this presentation as kind of a checklist. So when you're going through and you're looking at your benefits and compensation package, you can kind of use this and just check the boxes. And of course, this is such a big area. We can't touch on everything, but I just tried to put a lot of things in this that I've seen come up as sticking points or pain points over the last few decades of my experience managing benefits and compensation. So let me share my screen. Give me a second to get my technology lined up. All right, so today's agenda. Of course, Jeff's already done the introductions. For anybody in the group that is new, I'm Wayne Smith. I'm a principal consultant with AMT. I have more than 30 years of experience in HR, finance, safety, and even dabbled in IT a little bit. So most of this information I'm speaking from experience. If you have any questions about anything that we talk about on any one of these presentations, please feel free to jump in and ask questions. Just a quick reminder, each one of you that are in this webinar series should have got an invitation to complete an HR survey that is complimentary. If you are so inclined, if you complete that survey, then we will do an assessment with you and we'll get together. I'll give you a call. We'll set up something at your convenience and we'll spend some time walking through the survey and do an assessment. If you make notes and you want to talk about something that we've done in one of these presentations, that's fair game also. That's your time to use as you see fit. So just wanted to give you an update there. A reminder, I won't reach out to you to schedule that until you finish the survey. So go back and make sure you finished it. And then if you haven't heard from me, just shoot me an email and let me know. The overview, of course, this is the agenda. Today we're going to talk about benefits and compensation. You will hear me use the phrase total rewards. That's kind of interchangeable for me. When I talk about benefits and compensation, I try to dump everything in that bucket that could be considered a reward or an asset when it comes to attraction and retention. So if you're not familiar with that phrase, I use it very loosely in that context. We're going to talk about compensation analysis, pay for performance, the pros and cons for pay for performance. We're going to talk about benefits, and then we'll talk about perks, and then we'll spend a little bit of time talking about what we're going to do next month. Any questions on any of that? Anybody have any questions about the survey? Any issues? Any challenges using SurveyMonkey? Has it been? If you do have any issues with that, let us know.
Yeah, I think I missed it. I'm not sure that I got it. I mean, I probably did, but it's probably in a past email.
Okay. Well,
hey, Norma, this is Jeff. I'll go ahead and make sure we get that resent to you.
Yeah, I apologize. I just, there's sometimes I get so overwhelmed that things just sort of shoot over my head, and I apologize for that.
And
No problem.
there-
We'll make sure we get it reset, Norma.
it's possible that I don't type well. I'm not ashamed to say that. I have at least 6 thumbs, and I could have sent it to the wrong person. So we'll double check and figure out why you don't have it.
It's probably me.
All right. Anyone else? Everybody else okay with the survey? All right, so let's jump in. And like I said, if you're not familiar with some of this stuff, just jump in and ask questions. I think Jeff has all of the lines capable of unmuting at your discretion. So please take advantage of the opportunity with the small group. So total rewards components. So these are this is not the whole list, but this is a pretty good starting point of all of the things that might have value to your employees, your potential employees, especially when it comes to attracting talent and maintaining talent. Obviously, compensation. Most people work for a living. They have that money earmarked to there's something that they want to do with that money. That's probably the most obvious part of this conversation. Benefits is a little more vague because we have to, as HR professionals, we have to tread the line between compliance and voluntary benefits. So there is some gray areas there. Location can mean a lot to people. Most people don't like to commute a long way, so that can be part of the total rewards package. Flexibility, as we all know, COVID has introduced a level of flexibility, wanted or not. It's there. And we're going to have to deal with it moving forward. And that can have, I will interject this real quickly, that can have an impact on the total compensation package. There are a lot of conversations around if you're not paying the what's called the cost of doing business, if you're not buying clothes and lunches and paying for gas, and you have people that are on your payroll that are working remotely, do you adjust that compensation? And the quick answer is yes. For decades, there has been a perceived cost of doing business for someone to go to the office and do a traditional job. And if someone has the ability to work from home, put that in the equation. Social employee goodwill. Organizations that are really good at attracting and maintaining employee are also good at this part of it. They do picnics in the summer. They do, an event at the end of the year, maybe something for the kids with Santa Claus and that kind of thing. So keep that on your radar. If you're not doing it, it does have value, and you don't have to spend a ton of money. It doesn't cost a lot to, pay someone to play Santa Claus. I do know that employees love it when the boss or the head person in the organization is sitting there in a red suit and a beard. They get a kick out of that. So use what you have at your disposal. Stability means a lot. Some of you work in organizations that have been around for a long time. Capitalize on that. Make that part of the total rewards, and let people know, hey, a job here is something you can count on, and that has value. Recognition, we'll talk about that a little more later in the presentation, especially when we talk about performance evaluations and that kind of thing. Variety. Nothing kills enthusiasm more than boredom. And we all know that low performers are hard to manage, just trying to keep them engaged, keep them on track. High performers that get bored are as hard to manage. They will find things to do, and sometimes they're not the best things to do. So that's something to think about. Variety it really keeps people engaged. Workload, once again, people that are overworked or perceive being overworked. Now, I don't know very many people that you can survey that they won't give you feedback that they're working very hard all the time. But I think we know that's not the case. So there is a perception between working hard and thinking you're working hard, and that's where we have to be good at explaining to people the difference between activity and achievement, right? I know I've known people that work really hard all the time, but don't get a lot done. So there are some barriers there, but this is something from an employee engagement perspective that you can work with your teams on this one. Impact and importance. This is, I work with some of the consultants at AMT, and we go out and do outreach programs to recruit people to manufacturing. And this is the younger generations. This really means a lot to them. The under 30s, the Generation Y and the Zs, or the millennials, or whatever you want to call them. They need to know that they're making a difference. And that's part of the employee value proposition. So that's also part of the total rewards component. Autonomy, having people that can make decisions. When you go through your job descriptions, and we'll talk about job descriptions later, build in a certain amount of autonomy there that you can control. Now, this may put a little more burden on your supervisors to say, I need to double check and triple check, and you may have to have checklists, but autonomy gives people confidence, and it gives them a sense of satisfaction in their job. Of course, everybody wants advancement. Dead end, and I don't like that phrase, but this came up yesterday when I was talking to a high school group. They don't like dead end jobs, and people older than that don't like dead end jobs. You want to have at least a perception that you have an advanced opportunity for advancement. Working conditions. This is not as bad as it was, in the 1970s. If any of you are old enough or study the history of OSHA, working conditions are a lot better. It's not like it was back then before a lot of the OSHA bylaws and compliance things were put in place. But working conditions mean a lot. And if you have questions about your working conditions, do some things around realistic job previews. A realistic job preview should not be a recruiting tool that only shows the good side of the organization. It's not like selling a car where you're going to tell somebody about all the great things and none of the bad things. Let people see the working conditions. If it's hot, let them feel that. If it's noisy, let them hear it. If the floor is wet and there's traffic, there's fork truck traffic, let them get the real feel of working conditions. And then professional development, we all know what that is. And then one thing that gets overlooked in total rewards and benefits and compensation is personal development. And I'll hit on this again later in the presentation, but a lot of the products that you use from your vendors, like if you have an EAP, if you have a medical program, if you're contracted with Excellus or Blue Cross or whoever that is, they offer a lot of personal development tools. And sometimes those organizations will even come in at no cost to you and do parenting classes. I know that I've had a lot of luck over the years reaching out to my third-party administrator for my 401k or my pension and saying, hey, will you come in for a day and block off 15-minute sessions to sit down and talk to people about their personal development and their personal finances. So take an opportunity to review your package and say, what can I offer people on a personal level that they find value in? Any questions on that long list? I know that there's a lot to that, but like I said, I tried to make this presentation like a checklist where if you print it off and as you go through the year, you just kind of check the boxes and then see if you have all this stuff, at least an idea where you want to be on this. And I will be quick to say nobody masters all of it. So if that's your goal to master all of it, I would move away from that right away because nobody can do it all, but you can be good at some of it. Compensation philosophy. So let's talk about just how to approach the idea of compensation. As a business, how do you achieve your goals and objectives? From a departmental standpoint, each manager has charge of a function. They probably have a good idea how they're going to achieve their goals and objectives, but how do everyone in your organization do that? Is that built in as part of your performance reviews? Is it something that's built into your CBA for those of you that have union environments? So this is something to from a philosophical standpoint to understand, how do we get from A to B? How do we get better at this? How do we increase our business? How do we retain more people? How do we have fewer quality incidents? How do we have fewer safety incidents? And this should be all built into your compensation philosophy. If it's not around base pay, it can be around bonuses or incentives or even raises. And raises are a challenge for most of us on how to do that consistently and have the most impact for the individual and the business. Think about attraction and retention from a perspective of lifestyle. As someone that works in your organization and you're looking at each one of your job description, what kind of life is that individual going to have? And this is where, as HR professionals or managers or decision makers, we need to know, what's the cost of living in your area? What's the average household income? What does real estate cost? What does gas cost? And then take all of that information and kind of reverse engineer it and say, with what I'm offering, what kind of lifestyle can this person expect to have? And that will give you a really good idea on how to attract people and how to retain people and how to be able to speak the language that they want to hear to stay a part of your organization and to be successful. Then there's an opportunity to look at internal and external equity. So any one of your employees, when they're at work, do they see the value of their work as fair and equitable in comparison to their coworkers? Are they proud of what they do and what they get paid to do it? Do they feel like they are undervalued because someone works in production? Do they feel like they don't get the attention or the feedback or the compensation of someone else in another department just because it has more attention? I'll put it that way. And sometimes attention can be good and bad, right? Sometimes we overemphasize if our organization is having a struggle with safety and we're not meeting expectations around safety, then do we overvalue people that work in safety just because that department is not meeting expectations? And do we give that, are we throwing the perspective off a little bit? So it's a really good idea to try to look at each function objectively and understand how they're performing versus the expected performance. And once again, activity is not achievement, right? Pay for performance. So you're going to hear me say pay for performance a lot, and I'm going to try to tie it together with some other things here. But in my experience, pay for performance is probably the best way to keep people engaged and drive success for your organization. Now, for those of you that have unions and your CBA is already written, and we all know how unions value seniority over anything else, this is a challenge for you to get especially union people to perform at a high level, because there may not be an incentive for them. They may look at their coworkers and say, if I work harder and do a better job, I still get paid the same. So that's the challenge with the union environment. And if you have that, number one, my heart goes out to you because I've worked in union environments for a long time, but there are some different challenges that come along with that, and you have to be really creative. But we're not going to dive into that today. So if you have questions about union environments and incentivizing or motivating union employees, we can talk about that offline. Another part of pay performance is career development. So this should all be part of the same bundle. Career development should have an element that whenever you're sitting down and doing your performance reviews and you're talking about how much someone makes, kind of pull your succession plan in there and have that conversation about, this is our short-term goals, these are our long-term goals, and of course this is what we want to have on hand in case of emergency. And then performance management is a big part of that. Performance management usually falls to department managers and HR, and the need for consistency there is going to be key to success or failure. If you have a performance system that is not being applied consistently across your organization, it's going to be very quickly, I'll jump down to the next slide. I won't go ahead with that sentence. Let's talk a minute about communication. For those of you that have been in these presentations over the last couple of months, you know how much I mentioned communication. So I left a ... there, which lets you know that there's another slide coming on communication. So we'll touch on that in a minute. And then back to consistency, low morale and engagement, trust issues and or litigation. And some of us have been lucky enough and unlucky enough to have experienced some of this. So when you're looking at your pay for performance, if you have it, your career development and performance management, give special attention to your supervisors and your managers. They need additional training, and you need to be able to get that group of people in a circle and have them agree on a methodology to promote and execute your performance and your development plan, along with succession planning. Like I said, if you have 7 managers and it's perceived that one of them is giving everybody a pass when it comes to performance reviews, and those people are getting excels and higher grades for the same level of work, and then you have another manager in another department that is, I was going to use some profanity, but they were being hard on people, and their expectations were a little higher, then that program is probably not going to have as much value, because people talk. And if you think they don't, the workplace is a lot like high school. And if there's inconsistency, they will fill the blanks with some very creative ideas that probably will not be the best for the organization. Then overtime rules, the last thing I want to touch on, and I just threw this in this morning because I happen to be online. For those of you that are SHRM members and get the SHRM emails, you probably read this morning the same as I did, but it looks like the overtime rules thing is coming back. So for those of you that were doing this in 2016, you'll remember that there was a proposal that if you didn't make in excess of $47,000 a year, then you were eligible for overtime. I saw some information this morning that said this is probably going to get proposed again. So basically what it is there's something that most people refer to as an overtime rule, that if people in your organization, if you classify them as exempt, they have to make a certain amount of money, and they have to pass a duties test. And if you need to know what the duties test is, let me know. I can send you a copy of it. So there's basically 3 bullet points that you need to be able to check to make sure your exempt position is really an exempt position. But I did see this morning, so when this came up in 2016, there was a lot of panic, and I was one of them. I was an HR director that, I was like, oh no, I had to go run and do a review of all of my salary positions that weren't making $47,000 a year, and try to figure out what to do if this law passed. Now, at that time, the law didn't pass, and it was one of the federal courts ruled against it 10 days before it was supposed to go into effect. Well, it's back. And the suppositions are that this is going to get passed this time, and there are some really crazy numbers attached to this. I saw one number today that said this number could be as high as $75,000. So if you're in a salaried position, an exempt position, and once again, this is people guessing at this point, but I thought it was just crazy that number was out there floating around. So this is something I would be prepared for. So when you're looking at your compensation philosophy, like I said, when you're checking your list here, I would go out and create a spreadsheet and do one page and do an audit of my salaried positions at 40,000, do another page at 50, another at 60, and another at 70, just so you have a good idea. If this does get resurrected and does get put in place, have a plan, because this is not something you want to be reacting to. I know when the first time it came out, there was a lot of panic within my organization. I was working for a rather large Fortune 500 company at the time, and we really, at that point, we had no clue, what our salary situation looked like. We'd been hiring people for decades, and we thought we had it mastered, but we really had to reevaluate. So, does anybody have any questions about that? And that's something that's on the radar. Something to think about. All right. So let's move on. Communication. So this is the part 2 of the conversation around communication when it comes to compensation and benefits or total rewards. And this is usually done, this conversation is usually best done in person. So I like for this conversation to take place between the department manager and the individual. If you're doing performance reviews, this is a great time to do it. If you're doing stay interviews, that's another great time to do it. But have this conversation in person. Don't let this, if you have union environments, don't let this be a conversation between the union stewards or the business agent and the individuals have some input into this process, and let people know that the company has a lot of skin in the game when it comes to your employment, your future employment, your development, the amount of total rewards that we give you. One of the best ways that I've found to do this is doing an individualized total compensation report. And I like to do this at open enrollment time. So I've traditionally done open enrollment at the end of the year. I know organizations do it at different times of the year. Some of them do it in May, some of them start doing it in August. But I like to, when that process is done and everybody signed up for their benefits again, and you have a really good idea what next year is going to look like, give that person an individualized compensation report that says, this is what your total compensation is worth. This is not only your base pay, but this is how much the company pays for your benefits. If you're like most organizations, you're paying between 50 and 80% of the premiums on your employees' vision, medical, dental. Throw in there the PTO, the amount of the voluntary benefits that you're paying for, any paid time off. Sick leave. Now I know New York State has a sick leave mandate now. Hopefully all of you know about that and have something in place that makes you compliant with that. Holiday pay, put that in there in this total compensation report. Any personal time, any subsidizing you do for the next three items: jury duty, firefighters, and military. A lot of organizations, if you're on jury duty, the company will give you a stipend so you don't lose money when you're getting that little bit of money when you're on jury duty. Firefighters, if you're like me, most of the organizations I work with have voluntary firefighters, and those people sometimes get stipends to, I guess the best way to say it is not punish them while they're doing their civic duties or serving their communities. And if you have additional military subsidies for people that are in the National Guards, make sure that they know what the value of that is. And then, of course, the obvious ones are medical, dental, and vision. And then personalize this to where if someone is contributing the minimum to their 401k and you're matching that, let them know the value of that match. So this will be eye-opening in a lot of cases that, some of the people in your organization are walking around talking to their buddies in the community, say, I only make $50,000, $45,000 a year. But when you hand them this total compensation statement and it says your total rewards is closer to $75,000 a year, that's a little eye-opening. So take advantage of this. Does anybody out there already do this?
No, I've actually never heard of this, but I'm curious. Like, people really respond positively? Because I could imagine people just saying like, "Oh, you're just, like everybody gives that. So what are you trying to pretend that you're paying me more than you are?"
That's what I was going to say, because I've worked at a place that we did that, and that was the exact reaction doing this. Their answer was, "So we don't care what else you pay. Every other employer is going to pay the same to have us do this." So it's kind of like sour grapes. You want to tell me I cost this much, but I only cost what I take home in my pocket. So sorry, that was my comment.
And that's a good point. And that's where people you will need to spend as an organization the time to break it down and show them the value, because not all organizations, some organizations are on the leading edge of this. Some are on that's set pretty much in the middle, and some organizations lag. So this is one of the things, if it's a benefit to you, then use it. If it's not, and you're not in a position that it differentiates you, then like Jinx and Roland said, if it's sour grapes, then don't throw it out there. But if it has value, if it's a benefit, by all means use it.
And I guess if you're a company that has extra benefits that you're paying, you want to highlight that. So I can see the value in that context, but if you're just doing what everybody else is doing, yeah, it might be sour grapes.
Yeah, and there is some value out there also in for those of you that have access to SHRM, you can download the data and see what's being done nationally and in your region. So you can compare yourself. You can get a very good idea of where you are compared to the competition in your metropolitan statistical area. So that would help you make the decision whether you want to do this or not.
Yeah, I
The
can tell you
organizations,
from a startup perspective, which is what my company is, I strive to achieve all of these things.
yeah,
It's like, oh boy, if I could do that, that would be just really great. So it sounds like you guys have spoiled employees.
well, and it's about competition, right? Like Roland and Jenks said, you know, they're in everybody's competing for talent. And if you are trying to differentiate yourself by saying, I'm giving you what you're going to get down the street, then that's not necessarily differentiation. That's the definition of mundane, right? So like I said, in my experience, it's had value because I've been lucky enough to work for organizations that did a little more, that, you know, we covered 87 or 80% of the premiums. And if, like I said, if you look at the SHRM data, you don't have to do that. If you look at the Affordable Health Care Act, there is a certain number that you have to do to be compliant. Some do more and use that as an attraction tool. Good conversation. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah. Don't go to a gunfight with a knife. That would be the recommendation. Any other questions about that slide? So I guess what I heard was nobody's doing this now. Nobody that's on the call is doing this. Okay, I would be interested to see if you, when you do your homework on how you fare next to your competition, if this is something you decide to do. It sounds like Roland's tried it and it kind of backfired on him. So I would be interested to see more. Payroll, IT and administration. I know some of you on this call are knee deep in this right now, trying to come up with ways to implement self-service technologies that can save you time. This is worth a look. If you can affordably find a platform that helps you allow your employees to do self-service, it has a lot of value to your organization. And this is kind of like the last slide. There will be people in your organization that don't like this. Self-service for an organization that traditionally hasn't been self-service is a challenge. I remember when I rolled out self-service for open enrollment with an organization, and I had a gentleman come to me and he goes, "Why am I doing my open enrollment myself? That's your job." And at that point, I was trying to explain to him, you know, this gives you more control. You can go in and look and you can have more answers very quickly. This gives you more control over your situation. Obviously, he didn't see it that way. So it was a little bit of a culture change to convince him that self-service was in his best interest. There are a lot of platforms out there that you can test drive. They call these sandboxes. So you can run it side by side with what you're currently doing. So once again, this is an opportunity. If it makes sense for your organization, take a look at it. If it doesn't, if you do your homework and you check this box and say it's not worth the time, the effort, the implementation cost, I don't see that much value in it, then you can say you've looked at it and you moved on. It does offer more accuracy in maintaining and doing reporting. For those of you that are responsible for month-end reports and yearly reporting, and you have to have those ready very quickly. I have found HRIS systems made my life a lot easier when I could go to their reporting page and look at their standard reports and get exactly what I wanted in minutes rather than days or hours. Real-time transactions. For those of you that have any experience with this kind of thing, you can get PTO granted in real time. People can see if there's days available, cuts down some of the paper shuffling. And of course, if you're so inclined, save a tree. Sustainability does mean a lot to the younger generations when it comes to the employee value proposition. So if this is something you can put on your company website that we strive to be paperless, less environmental impact, then by all means, use what you can use to attract the people that you're competing for. Any questions around this one? Jinx, I think you said last time we talked, you were actually looking at some self-service technologies. Did you make a leap on anything?
No, no, still looking, still dreaming.
Still dreaming?
Yeah, it's a
It's-
slow process. But yeah, we're still, I mean, it's still on the sort of on the horizon.
So it's not an immediate, but it's a want, not a need.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
well, good.
I think it's a need, but I haven't, I have to make that case.
And I've been in.
So sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, I use ADP, which I understand is super expensive. I didn't know, but as a startup, I don't even know what these forms are. I don't know what they do. And I have the employees, they can be able to enter their hours, which I have to approve, so I have to do that. But they take care of all the withholding, all the crazy forms that you have to fill out, and plus they get in trouble for it if they do it wrong, not you. So so it's just you don't have to be as smart, you just have to enter stuff in. And I've found it's a much better use of my time because I don't have an HR department, and I really appreciate the convenience of it.
Yeah, so Norma, that's you mentioned several things there. These third parties will fulfill some of the compliance needs around, the IRS and that kind of thing. I have a lot of experience with ADP. It is expensive. I don't know if anybody out there is using anything else. I've used a little bit of everything over the years, and I have my opinions. But I have found that a lot of these platforms and hosting platforms are as good as your customer service rep. So if your person that is helping you run your program is good at what they do, then you're very happy. If you have someone that doesn't, if they're new, they're not familiar, or they make a lot of mistakes, they can make your life miserable. So, but like I said, what's everybody else using? Roland, what do you guys use right now?
Sorry, couldn't find the mute button. So with us, payroll is integrated into our ERP system. So we do have kind of a reconciliation process, but it's pretty quick. But then it's really all in our ERP. So
Okay.
Kelly can better contact if I'm oversimplifying.
Yeah, no. So I've looked into, different platforms, but because we do our own payroll here, all of those platforms want to take on our payroll also. So it's kind of, like it, I would love to have it, but it just isn't necessary apparently.
And that's part of the business case, right? That you need, especially with finance, when you go to finance and say, hey, I need $75,000 to launch ADP, they're going to say, do you really need to do this? And how many people can we hire to do the same amount of work? It just depends on how complex your organization is. That's the challenge that most of us have, is how successfully and how well can we do a job ourselves rather than outsourcing it.
Well,
I will say
they didn't charge me anything to set it up. That was completely free. But, they charge me fees every time to run payroll. And so there, and I see that, I'm like, whoa, and my payroll is so low being a startup. But there was no upfront fees for ADP. But I can tell you their customer service is not that responsive. You have to sit there on a chat line and it's bad. But on the other hand, I don't have an HR department, and that kind of is serving as it, and it was easy to get into, and it didn't cost me a ton of money. I mean, it didn't cost me anything to set it up, so it was, for me, it made sense.
And that's pretty unique. I think that's been one of the deterring factors for some organizations, is the setup cost. I don't know, Jinx, what you've run into. I know you've been shopping a little bit, but do you have any idea what setups, what they were charging?
I'm trying to remember, and I don't remember that the setup cost was the prohibitive cost. It's the annual cost where, we have people doing it. Maybe not as well as we could, but you know, it would be an additional cost for us, but I don't think the setup was something that didn't really like strike me as an obstacle.
Okay. Well, this is a great conversation, and I want to jump to the next slide. But if there's a need, if we want to do something separate and do some reviews of different options when it comes around administration, electronic administration, and technologies, shoot me an email or shoot Jeff an email and let us know if that has value. And we will look and see if that's something that we want to do as AMT to offer as a service, because I know it can be confusing. There's a lot of options out there, you know, and there's a lot of smaller organizations like Paychecks that people really like, that don't cost as much as the big, you know, the big Kronos and ADPs. So like I said, if this conversation has value, let us know and we'll take a deeper dive. All right. So let's move on. Let's talk about the compensation system design. And I'm going to go through this pretty quickly because it looks like we only have about 20 minutes to go. Yeah, we're down to 19 minutes, and I want to make sure we get through the benefits part of this. So 4 basic steps in the compensation process, the compensation system design. First of all, you want to do a job analysis, document your jobs. That's typically the job descriptions, the job evaluation where you give value, and then creating pay structure around that. So I'm going to hit on each one of these very quickly. In my opinion, this is probably the one where you're going to get the most value, because it's going to be the starting point for a lot of other work that you can do. Doing a job analysis on all your positions, and I think I saw Carrie on the call from Raymond Hadley. Carrie is very familiar with this process right now. So for Carrie, I apologize, this is a review for you, but this should be very familiar. The job analysis will give you an opportunity to look at HR planning for the short term and the long term. It will give you a good idea of what you need for staffing if you go through this process and really do a good job of reviewing your jobs. It is a really good way to get a handle on your training needs also, because you'll be able to go through each one of those and say, this is what this person needs to be able to do to be successful. And then it's a very quick transition to do a gap analysis at that point and say, what skills do they have and what skills do they not have? It also is very important for performance management. If you have the expectations and all of the things laid out in the job analysis that people need to be successful, then that's a very quick transition again over to your performance management program. This next one is huge. A job analysis can a lot of times lead to a job safety analysis. And if you don't have job safety analysis, I will leave that for webinar number 6, where we're going to talk about risk management and safety. But job safety analysis, or JSAs for you safety people, this is a need. I will go as far as call it a must-have. So make sure that that's part of the job analysis. And then what we're talking about today, rewards. It also has a huge impact on employee relations and legal compliance. For those of you that understand the EEO stuff and accommodations, make sure that's part of your job analysis also. If you have that built in and you understand the exposure and your company philosophy around that, then it should minimize those. I know people hate going to your mailbox and getting that huge packet that has an attorney's name on it, and that takes up your next week. So good way to avoid that. Any questions about that, about job analysis? And any one of these are a project in themselves. So if you have any questions about how to do a job analysis, or you want to entertain it as a project, feel free to reach out. Job descriptions, I'm going to go through this one really quick, but make sure you're updating your job, looking at your job descriptions once a year. It is not unusual that if you have someone in your organization that's been there for 20 years, then their job description hasn't been reviewed for 20 years because you haven't had to hire anybody. take a look at it, and at a minimum, send it over to the department manager, the subject matter expert, and say, is this still relevant? One thing to watch out for with job descriptions that can be a real challenge is when people leave an organization, somebody has to take on those duties till you get a new person. And sometimes those duties can get pushed off to other people. But when that new person gets hired, sometimes those duties don't get transferred back to that original job description. So keep an eye on that and see if you see responsibility creep in your job descriptions where some of them get a little convoluted. Understand the minimum qualifications to successfully perform the defined position. Most of the times when you're reviewing job descriptions, you will find you may have some things on there that you just don't need because you have new equipment, new processes, or whatever. So make sure that they're accurate. And then don't forget the behavioral attributes, the soft skills, the things, problem solving, communication skills, all of those things. Of course, your job description has a lot of the hard skills, the KSAs. Make sure you're putting in the other things that you can actually test for now. And then there are all kinds of different ways to test soft skills that are very interesting. Then you get to this part where you're going to do a job evaluation and make sure that you have some kind of ranking for your positions. You can put them in on the left side of this slide. You'll see the non-quantitative processes where you can just say, what is the overall value to the organization, which might kind of upend this process. You could have job classifications where you kind of dump things in big buckets. So where you have everything in production, and then you have a kind of a nebulous approach to that. Or you can move to a more scientific method on the right-hand side of the screen, which is a quantitative method where you assign points to each part of the job functions. So you assign points to the skills, responsibilities, the physical effort and demands, the working conditions, and the responsibilities included, especially the supervision of others. And then this is where some of you are familiar with the concept of hay or pay structure. This is where that comes from, that if you have a hay structure, you've typically noted 3 things that you want to grade, and then you can have a hay pay system where you can have things in an easily defined methodology of what the job is worth within the organization. Any questions on that? And then very quickly, once again, pay structures, pay ranges with some overlap. If you don't have these, something to think about. And once again, if this doesn't fit your organization or if it doesn't have value, then you check the box. Say, you know, we've looked at this, it doesn't have value, we've moved on. But for most organizations, a pay range that has some overlap so that you don't have people maxing out. You have something called red circle rates where someone has reached the top of the pay range. And then that's a very quick step to a disgruntled employee if pay time comes around and everybody else is getting an increase and they're not. So this is one way to address that. Look at the minimum of your pay range. Look at the minimum, the midpoint, and the maximum. Most of the time you want your minimum level of the range to be for someone new that doesn't have a lot of experience in that pay range. The midpoint should be someone that is experienced and meets performance. So when you're hiring someone that checks all the boxes on your job posting, they should be landing pretty close to the midpoint, and that midpoint should be pretty close to the market rate. The maximum of your pay range, once again, going back to those red circle rates, that should typically be someone that's been in that position for a long time. And then at that point, you have other conversations to have about why that person's not moving into other positions. Why is there no succession plan here? Are they happy in this position? Do they want to stay here? Know how to apply the compa ratio. This is a really quick calculation that you can do when you're doing your staffing that can tell you, you know, if you interview someone and they say they want this much money, you can dump that right in your pay range. You do the compa ratio, so you just divide the pay by the midpoint and you get a number. If it's less than 1, it tells you one thing. If it's more than 1, it tells you something else. But it's a very quick calculation you can do to stay consistent in your pay range. You know, once again, if you have a pay philosophy and you're outside, you're above and below your ranges, then it doesn't have a lot of value. So it should be a roadmap to keep you where you want to be. And then look at the Department of Labor data. I was looking at this recently with some of the group at AMT. The New York State Department of Labor publishes labor data regularly. Now, some of it is not the most up to date. It's typically 12 to 18 months old, but it is fairly comprehensive, and you can age that data fairly easily by going back and looking at a year's worth of economic indicators, and you can age that data and use it now. So if you need some of that data, let me know. We always have it on hand at AMT, but it can give you some really good ideas, and it's broken out by the Southern tier. So you can break it out by counties and metropolitan statistical areas. And it's a good way to get a good idea. Now, this doesn't replace going out and hiring a third party to do a wage and compensation survey. It will not be that detail oriented, but it's a good place to start, and it's reliable. They do have a lot of good data points. Pay for performance, I just want to hit on this one real quick one more time. If you don't have pay for performance, it may not work in your environment, but take a look at it. It is typically one of the best ways to promote individual performance and company performance. Align it with your performance evaluations, make sure you have long and short-term objectives. Going back to the conversation we had earlier, this only works with manager or reviewer consistency. If you have outliers when it comes to managing this process, it doesn't have a lot of value, because you will find people that'll poke holes in it, and then you have a morale issue. But it will address organizational goals, performance management standards, behaviors, the feedback process, and then it's a really good way to measure company and organizational growth. And then we'll get to benefits. And I know we don't have a lot of time. We only have 8 minutes. So once again, for those of you who joined late, I set this presentation up kind of like a checklist to go through these. So this is a checklist for benefits. Make sure you're compliant. Look at New York State sick leave and the New York paid family leave. If you're not familiar with those, get familiar with them, understand how they work, understand how they run concurrently with federal programs like the federal family leave programs. Attraction and retention, know what the competition is doing. So if you're not doing local market assessments, reach out to do them. A couple of you mentioned a minute ago, why would I do a total compensation report and give it to my employees if I know that what the competition is doing is the same? So if you have that information, that will allow you to know if that approach has value for you. If you don't have the information, then you're not going to know whether that has value or not. Financial objectives, get familiar with your finance people, spend some time with your finance people and understand what you can and can't spend. I hate, as an HR person, spending days and weeks on a project and going to finance and finance stepping on it and says, no way. Understand ahead of time before you spend the time and the money. Administration, we already talked about that with some of the IT platforms. Understand utilization, high and low. This is especially around your benefits programs, more specifically medical, dental, and vision. If you are utilizing your program on the high end, there could be a problem. If you're utilizing it on the low end, there could be a problem. It could mean people aren't using it. If you're on the high end, then it means you probably have what's catastrophic cases, which means that people aren't going to the doctor and doing checkups. Your program is getting hit with catastrophic claims that are $75,000 to $100,000 because people aren't keeping up to speed on their checkups. What do employees want? Survey your employees and ask them what they want from their benefits program. Ask them what they're using and what they're not using. You may be spending money for programs that is underutilized, that may need some promotion. Be creative, consider all the options. I don't know how many of you do this, but take advantage of the opportunity to sit down with your third-party administrator every year when you do open enrollment and look at the market data and see where it's going. There was a little note on here about COVID. I know that over the last couple of years, we saw the utilization of medical plans went way down. And a lot of administrators, a lot of HR people, directors were saying, yay, we have this healthcare thing in a good place. Well, realistically, you don't, because the data shows that people stopped going to the doctor during COVID, and they are projecting that in the next couple of years, the catastrophic claims are going to be a lot higher because people aren't treating their, the cancers that could have been caught early. They're not treating their blood pressure or their diabetes. So don't do a victory lap if you're on the low end. Find out why you're not on the low end of your utilization. Take control. Don't be a victim. That speaks for itself. And that's what I wanted to say as an introduction to wellness programs. Wellness programs are a great way to control costs when it comes to medical, dental, and vision plans, especially medical. If you can create a culture where people are having annual blood draws, and there are a lot of ways to make that part of your culture. There are incentives that you can do. A lot of your medical plans will work with you to do this. If you can create a culture where everybody in your organization is getting a blood draw once a year and you're doing the diagnostic testing, and then you can take another step and you can get the spouses on those plans to participate in that program, and you can build incentives into the premiums to get this done. We know that when we look at our utilization reports, statistically, the most expensive person on your plan will be the spouse, not the employee. Try to pull that spouse into the wellness program. Most insurance plans offer wellness programs. Explore them and see if they have value for you. It can be. I was shocked and amazed all the times I implemented wellness programs of, number one, the number of times we found life-threatening conditions. We found, you'll have a certain percentage of your population that if this hadn't been caught, this probably would have been some terrible news at another date. And you will be surprised at the number of high dollar claims, especially if you're self-insured, the number that goes down. I have been able to drive down those numbers 75 to 80% over the course of 36 months with the implementation of a good wellness program. Something to think about. May not be a fit for all organizations, but something to think about. Domestic partner coverage. If you're offering this, take a look at it. This is one of the programs that is just a real pain in the butt to administer, especially if you're doing it right and you're following the IRS guidelines where you're doing the deduction, you're taxing the value to the domestic partner. This can be an administrative nightmare. Take a look at this. If you don't need to do it, don't do it. If it adds value to your organization, then keep it. But this is one I've been able to move away from, especially with New York having same-sex marriage. Sometimes there's no reason to have it anymore. Look at EAPs, employee assistance programs. Do regular audits. If you've never done an insurance audit, it's not going to make a lot of people happy, but it'll be another one of those things where you're going to find, if you do open enrollment and you require everybody on your plan to show a marriage certificate for every spouse and a birth certificate for every child or dependent, you're going to find people that are on your plan that are not supposed to be on there. You're going to find cousins and grandkids and some surprising things if you do an audit. I wouldn't recommend doing it every year because it's a lot of work, but it's a tool that you can use. Make sure you have multiple tiers for plans, and then take a look at tuition assistance. A lot of people call this tuition reimbursement. It doesn't have to cover 100%, but it can be a big part of your benefits plan. And then we'll wrap this up with perks. There are a lot of opportunities in your local area to partner with businesses, and it doesn't cost you anything. And this is free advertising for local businesses. You can put together an onboarding package that has coupons for plumbing, daycare, landscaping, cell phone companies, AT&T, Verizon. They love to give you coupons that if you send their employees to them, they'll give them 5% off on their cell phone. Training, professional and personal. Car dealerships. I've actually in the past, I worked at a place that we had 1,200 people and people were taking time off to buy new cars. So I actually brought car dealerships in and had them set up displays on the property and talk to employees about, you don't have to take a day off to go get a car. We'll come to you. And they gave special incentives. They actually gave employee pricing. So Chevy and Ford would come out and say, hey, if you partner with us, we'll give you employee pricing. We'll give you 12% off on a new pickup truck. You don't know if you don't ask. Clubs like gyms and discount stores, don't forget about food. People love food. One of my best performance enhancers are donuts and cupcakes. And if you go as far as pizza and wings, you can get some great performance for several days on $30 or $40 worth of pizza and hot wings. Vaccines are another one that organizations offer at no cost to employees. COVID has created a culture around itself, but traditionally flu vaccines, it sure cuts down on those excuses. I can't come to work this week because I have the flu. That gives you the opportunity to say, well, why didn't you come in and get the free flu shot? Community goodwill, and then increasingly we hear a lot about transportation. So those are all ideas, all part of the checklist. The last page is about measuring your benefits program. This is a good way to really get a good handle on where you've been and where you're going. I would do this annually and create some charts so you know what you're spending. The methodologies are here. So if you want to do your cost per employee, just take your total healthcare cost divided by the number of employees enrolled. And don't take it by the number of employees that are enrolled. Next time, we're going to talk about employee and labor relations. This will be of particular interest for groups that have union groups, but even if you're trying to stay non-union. I saw something recently that Amazon in New York has voted for a union. So this is always something that you have to think about. So for union groups and those that want to stay non-union, tune in next time. And this is Jeff and I, one more time. If you have questions, let us know. I am done. I'm going to stop sharing, and I think I'm late again.
You were pretty close. 1 minute, I think we'll let it slide. So
I just can't make it in the allotted hour. I even cut 4 slides out of this presentation and couldn't do it. But I will say, I love the conversation around what works and what doesn't work. So I would rather spend the time and get the feedback.
all right. Well, we appreciate it, Wayne. Thank you, everybody, for taking time out of your day to attend. And that concludes our session. So have a
Thank
great
you.
Thank you very
weekend. And
much.
thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.